What's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of the PodcAls in English. It comes out every Tuesday. A reminder, it also comes out in French on Thursday. So bilingual house fans get the double dose of content every week. Subscribe, like, comment wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, if you're listening somewhere, make sure that you subscribe. Really helps. Leave us a rating and a comment. It doesn't have to be positive. The comment, I would prefer if it was positive. But if you want to leave a 5-star rating with a negative comment that makes fun of me, I'd sign up for that too. Appreciate you joining us. We've got a big, busy show lined up for you here this Tuesday, and we're going to start with some talk. There's a former member of the Montreal Alouettes, a significant piece of franchise history, decided to retire from the CFL. We'll get into that in just a couple of seconds, but do also want to mention that we're going to be speaking to newly signed local boy, running back, former Carabin, now a Montreal Alouette, Sean Thomas Erlington will join us in just a few minutes, so be sure to keep it locked in for that great interview. You're not going to want to miss it. There's a lot of interesting points that were brought up at the time of the recording of the interview. In all transparency, the interview was recorded right after we did some content. If you saw my co-host in French, who's Sam Boulay-Grimard, did an outstanding job working with Sean Thomas, filming him kind of around town at Water Market and stuff like that. And a video came out yesterday, which is Monday, if you're listening to this on a different day. If you didn't have a chance to see the video of Sean Thomas speaking and facing the Montreal camera for the first time, it was really, really cool. Not a very long video, but I think it'll hit you right in the feels. So make sure you go out there and you check out the video of Sean Thomas Erlington taking his first steps in Montreal as a member of the Montreal Alouettes. So that piece of content is available to you. You can check it out. But we will be talking to Sean Thomas Erlington in just a few minutes. Did want to talk about Henoc Muamba and his retirement. I mean, you're talking about a guy who wasn't just great, elite in the Montreal market. You're talking about a dude who really, I mean, he was shining throughout the CFL. Obviously had a stint, was drafted first overall by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 2011, and then went on to have a brilliant career that he spent some time in Indianapolis, spent some time in Saskatchewan, spent some time in Montreal, spent some time, obviously, in Toronto, where he won a Grey Cup and was the most outstanding Canadian and most outstanding player at the Grey Cup, just the second Canadian to win both after Andrew Harris did it in 2019. But just, when I think of Henoc Muamba, and obviously prior to joining the Alouettes, I was part of mainstream media, right? I worked for TSN Radio, covered the games for TSN Radio, was part of the broadcast team there. And I just, always had good rapport with Henoc, and just a classy dude. What you see is what you get. He's not one of those guys that, acts a certain way in front of the camera or when the cameras turn on or in front of the media. It was just a genuine dude, just a really, really good person. And look, I know last year kind of started dipping into the media side of it, and I know he was part of the TSN panel, and he's a guy who was doing a lot of stuff for CFL and CFL.ca and the Waggle podcast and all that fun stuff. So I think the good news is that we're probably going to see Henoc around the game anyway, breaking it down for us. But, I think not having him in the league all year, he was a member of the Argonauts but didn't play all year, I think people kind of started to see it coming. But really one of the best Canadian linebackers that the league has ever seen. And again, there's not many guys who come out of St. Francis Xavier, St. FX, and have brilliant careers. Henoc Muamba is one of them, but it's not a traditional powerhouse. It's not Western. It's not McMaster. It's not Laval or Montreal. It's a school, or Calgary. It's a school that doesn't necessarily produce a ton of elite talent, but they definitely got it right with Henoc Muamba. And obviously the player deserves most of the credit. But not necessarily a powerhouse, but they also did produce Keon Julian Grant, who's currently, I think one of the rising stars in the Canadian Football League. So there's a handful of players every year from St. FX, but the school is going to lose one. with Mwamba's retirement. But it kind of got me going. And you know, going back to his first stint with the Alouettes, it was such a short period of time. I think he played 4 games. Um, and that was back in 2015. So he got released by the Colts. I guess that was, I don't know, I guess that was sometime in August or September, and then waited a little bit, and then ended up signing with the Alouettes in September. And I mean, that was a big time signing at the time. So he's a guy who came in and really helped try to give the team a boost. Now, it didn't result in a Grey Cup in 2015, but still was a really, really good player. And then left the Alouettes, was released by the Owls in order to sign with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think he made the Cowboys, came back, played in Sask, then eventually came back to Montreal. And so to me, I think this is what I'll remember. And in reality, only played 2018 and then 2019 in Montreal, and then the 2020 season was canceled due to COVID, and then he went off and became a member of the Toronto Argonauts. But to me, I think people, when they look back at 2019, you have to keep in mind, like, the Montreal Alouettes in 2018, they weren't very good. They were a team that struggled, a team that without an identity, a team that had a hard go at it. They went 5-13 in 2018, and that was Mwamba's first year with the Alouettes. But you look at what they were able to do. So before he got to the Alouettes the second time around, the Alouettes were 3-15 in 2017. Now the following year they ended up going 5-13, like I said, but you have to keep in mind that, like, there was a culture change. There was something that happened, there was Kahari Jones and there was Vernon Adams, and Gino Lewis stepped up and became an important part of the franchise, and Stanback was already here. But when that shifted in 2019, I mean, people think of the offense, and in particular with Vernon Adams, just because, there hadn't been a legit starting quarterback in Montreal for a while. But if you think about the defensive attitude and the way that all changed in 2019 as well, I mean, Henoc Muamba was a big part of it. Henoc Muamba was, one of the de facto captains on this team. And you look at what they were able to build. They went 10-8. They finished second in the East. They didn't win a playoff game. They ended up losing to Edmonton. But I mean, you went from 3-15, 5-13 to 10-8. And there's a lot of guys on that team who had a lot to do with that success. And so, Vernon Adams was definitely part of it. And also keep in mind, they were coming out of the Johnny Manziel era in 2018. But, Vernon Adams was a huge part of it. Gino Lewis, big part of it. Jake Winicky and William Stanback. And, the offensive line was better. And there, there were some key signings in free agency. But, you go back and you look at what Henoc Muamba meant to that defense. So he was a big time player that made a lot of big time plays with that defense. And the numbers, I think, will bear it out. He's always a guy that was close to or around 100 tackles, just a very productive middle linebacker. And yeah, he had 108 tackles the first year in Montreal in 2018, and that defense obviously was on the field a lot. But in 2019, he ended up missing a game, but made 93 tackles. Had a quarterback sack, 2 forced fumbles. He was just always a productive player. And I think it's important to remember that as much as I want to give all those other guys credit, the offensive guys, their credit, because they played a big part in things changing with the Alouettes and getting it to be the team that it is now. It's important to realize that on the defensive side of the ball, there was, the Patrick Levels and the Tommy Campbells and the Armando Sewells, and those guys were all important. I'm not saying that Henoc Muamba is more or less important than those guys, but he was certainly a big-time part of it, a big-time personality. And the only reason that I would say that, he may have been bigger than a few of the other guys, and John Bowman obviously is in the mix too, but I mean, Henoc Muamba was a guy who was bilingual, came to Montreal, his French was immaculate, but embraced the community, and the community embraced him as well. There's no doubt about that. I mean, every piece of content, if you go back and look, I mean, Henoc Muamba was involved in a lot of stuff, and clearly it wasn't just that he was really personable and the team wanted to use him. Clearly, he wanted to be involved uh, when it came to, content and marketing the team and whatnot. And he helped a lot, but involved in the community as well. I think there's a lot of, community events where you would see Henoc Muamba and you would see him on the billboards and whatnot. So, I mean, he's just a guy that wherever he went, embraced the community, was genuine enough that I think the community realized that he was somebody that they could embrace as well. And so to me, I'll always think about the guy with that big smile on his face walking into Percival Molson Stadium. Excuse me as I dropped the pen. But that's where I'm looking at I'm thinking about the player on the field, yes, but also thinking about the player off the field and what he meant to his respective, CFL communities that he was in and what he meant to the CFL community as a whole. And I think you've seen it throughout the week. The league has done a really good job celebrating Henoc Muamba's career. So I was really glad that, I know he ended up technically signing for another year last season, was under contract with the Argos. But, in reality, I think my Henoc Muamba moment, as much as it's funny to say because I work for the Alouettes, I think the Henoc Muamba signature moment is definitely going to be the Grey Cup game and the interception he had in the Grey Cup game when he was with the Argonauts when they stunned the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 2 years ago. But I think if you think about that's on the field, off the field, I think he just meant so much to so many different communities. And, he played in the biggest markets in the league, in, Toronto, Montreal are two of the largest. And then, when it comes to football hotbeds, played in Winnipeg, was really appreciated by the fan base there. Played in Saskatchewan, was really appreciated by the fan base there. And, it was just one of those things where he bounced around a little bit. He played for 4 teams plus the NFL stints, but he went and made an impact everywhere he went. And I wish there were more players like that, but there are some guys who come up and they want to do their job. They want to be football players and nothing else. But Henoc embraced all of it. And that's what, I appreciated from him is just that he was a great football player while being very, very present everywhere else in different aspects of the game. So, Henoc Muamba, after 11 seasons, called it a career, and we wish him all the best. We're going to try our very best to get him on the French podcast this week because I'm sure he'll be doing a bunch of interviews in English. I think you'll hear from him, pretty much everywhere. But I think we'll try to get him in French, see if we can get him to admit some juicy things or give us some juicy stories and some tidbits on his career and all that stuff. I think we'll try to get him this week. We should be able to do that. But I know it is a busy week for him. And if we don't get him this week, we'll get him eventually. But he's a really good dude and a guy that I appreciate a lot because, like I said, he was a professional at every level. No, he was a good dude. It was hard to see him leave Montreal both times. I think it turned out well for him, and it turned out well for the Alouettes too. With the way that it played out, just a year later, winning the Grey Cup and whatnot. But no, I think, and I said 2021 Grey Cup. I think it was the 2022 Grey Cup, where he ended up being the champ and the MVP and the most outstanding Canadian. And also, I remember covering for TSN Radio. They sent a bunch of us out to Calgary to cover the Grey Cup in 2019, and that was the year he played so well. He ended up winning the most outstanding Canadian for the regular season. So, just really good member of the Montreal Alouettes. Was a very productive player, great ambassador. Never embarrassed the organization, never embarrassed the league, and did a little more than hold his own out in the NFL. Played some games, made some tackles. So, shout out to Henoc Muamba. There's some times where guys don't live up to the hype of being a first overall pick. Henoc Muamba lived up to the hype and even more than that. So, shout out to Henoc. We'll try to get into contact with him this week and just try to see what he has to say. So shout out to Henoc Muamba for the outstanding career. Too bad it finished in Toronto, but it probably worked out for the best. That was his home province. I know he's born in Congo, but he ended up moving to Mississauga and all that stuff. So nice that he finished in his home province and won a championship and all that fun stuff. So that's That's pretty much it. That's what I've got to say about Henoc Muamba. I hope that people reached out to him. Fans tweet him, comment on his retirement post on Instagram. Just let him know, especially people from Montreal. I know that he held the fans here in high regard. Make sure that you reach out to Henoc Muamba and wish him well in retirement. But again, I think he's going to be around the game quite a bit. All right, we'll change gears here. And our next guest is the newest member of the Montreal Alouettes backfield. He's a former University of Montreal Carabin, a Vanier Cup champ, and hopefully we can add Grey Cup champ in 2024 to his resume. He's running back Sean Thomas Erlington. Sean, for a lot of people on the outside looking in, it felt like you coming back to Montreal was a long time coming. Did it feel that way for you, and how did it all come about?
It felt like that a little bit. I think deep down I did someday want to come and play for the Alouettes. Obviously things weren't in place to happen that way, but I'm happy that they did the way they did this year.
So when did you realize oh man, all right, this is gonna happen?
So talking with my agent Sasha, we were exploring our options this year. Obviously going back to Hamilton was still an option, but I think for me personally, without having any other discussion with anybody else, was once Stenback left and asked to be released, I was like, okay, maybe that's the perfect time, a good time to come and join the team.
Are you free to discuss the number that you've chosen? Because Stenback was 31. Did you want to come in and take your number? Do you want to go somewhere else? Are we keeping that under wraps until camp? What are we doing?
No, I mean, I think it's I'm free to say. I don't mind. I am not sticking with the number 31. I opted to go with number 21. For me, I wanted this new experience to be new. Like I said, I didn't want to be considered as the replacement of Stenback or the new 31. I think number 21 is a number I'll be going with, and a bit of a story behind it for me as I was choosing which number I wanted was, at Cégep du Vieux-Montréal, I had number 2, and University of Montreal, I had number 1. So if you put them all together, it's
21.
It's 21.
Yeah. That's all right. That's good. I like that. That's quick math. So can you tell me, we'll get into some serious football stuff in a second, but if you can take something from Hamilton and drop it into Montreal, like the city, if there's something that Montreal's missing, that Hamilton or Ontario, somewhere where you were close by, Stony Creek, whatever, is there something you would take from there and drop into Montreal? Turn Right on Red's a big one, but you can't have that one because I just said it. And you're a Laval guy, so you can do that anyway.
Honestly, I think, and I hope that it's a project that will be implemented or brought to the team in the future. Maybe I won't be playing at that point, but I think having nothing against Percival Molson, but I think the Alouette having their own stadium to themselves, and so that the fans and the people that are passionate about football and the Alouettes have a place to go where they know that that's where football happens. That's where Alouettes play.
You played a pretty big game at Percival Molson Stadium in 2014. I was there covering it for TSN Radio, the Vanier Cup, that win against McMaster. I mean, what a crazy ending. I'm curious. There's so many guys who are on that team that play for or work for the Alouettes right now. I'm curious, when you think back to that game, what specifically do you remember?
First of all, it was really cold.
Yeah.
It was a really cold game. I can remember during the warm-up where when we were on the field, the spot where the sun was out on was perfectly fine. The turf was fine. But if there was no sun on some spots on the field, it was like icicles all over the ground. It was frozen, and you did not want to fall on that part of the field. But other than that, also, I can still remember when I got a little goosebumps when I think about it. The moment we blocked that field goal, the crowd just went wild, and it just it's hard to reproduce that effect, that sound, that something that I guess everybody that worked for or were how can I say it? They were rooting for Carabin. Well, they were hoping to get a little turnover that or a blocked field goal. But when it happens and it's there and it happens right there and then and now, with the amount of people that were there during that day, it was amazing.
You have a funny Danny Machocha story I've never heard? He doesn't listen. Don't worry about it. You can say something embarrassing. It's fine.
Funny? No, it was nothing funny, but it was just always. I'll always commend him for his efforts in speaking in French when I know like his first language is English. Sometimes it's just his pronunciations or the way he would say things. I can remember we could be on bus rides or in a big meeting at the start of the year or during the playoffs, and it's just sometimes it's like he gets whatever he wants to say. It gets through really easily, and people get it. But sometimes there's a few words here and there where you're like, okay, that was funny. That was like, I got it, but that was funny. Yeah.
It's funny. Dequa had told us a story once about how, I don't know if you had the same experience, but Danny had his like caterers come in and they stuffed you. I don't know if you were on the team still, but Dequa says like we had lasagna available to us like 24/7. We'd have it first thing in the morning. We'd have it like late at night or whatever. He's like, there was always lasagna available.
I can't recall. Probably if I had a bit more pieces of that story, maybe I could recall properly. But if I think about it right now, no. But there was a saying where he was like, I'm trying to figure out how was he saying it. I don't want to imitate him.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. Contract signed, right?
Yeah, okay, no, let's leave it at
that. So I'm curious, like, who was the first phone call you made when you put pen to paper with the Alouettes? Like, first person in your family that you told?
I definitely shot a text at any of my close family members, so my mom, dad, and my sister. But the first phone call I made was to my granddad. Mm-hmm. Huge fans, although he followed me through my whole career. Even in Hamilton, he was always rooting for me. Sometimes a little less when it was against the Alouettes, but like he's a huge Alouettes fan, and I remember going and watching games with him when I was younger. Times where like when Calvillo was at his prime and stuff like that, and I knew it would make him really, really happy. So I let him know because funny story also, he bought a Alouettes Grey Cup champ hat and he showed it to me and I was like, ew, like why are you showing me that? I don't want to see it. And then when I called him I was like, you know what, like you'll be able to wear that cap like with joy and I don't mind you showing it to me now anymore. And like he put two and two together and he knew I signed with them.
If he would have waited, he could have maybe got the player discount. He wouldn't have had to pay it full price. True. But what was that like? What was that from his end? Like, what was that like for? Like, was he emotional? What was the reaction there?
He was really happy. I remember he said like when I asked him like before we started to have that conversation how he was doing and stuff, and he was like, "Oh, I'm a little sick, but like you know I'll be all right, just a little cold." And then when I told him, it was like, "Well, I'm not sick anymore. I'm happy." Yeah.
So we're gonna have to get him. How quickly can we get him into a 21? Yeah, how quickly can we get him into a jersey?
It's funny you talk to me about that because I think it was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. He was like, "So how does it work to purchase jerseys? Like how are we doing this?" I was like, "Well, just give me a second. Let me check how I could get my discount and get you a jersey, and it should be good."
Yeah, no, that's special, man. That's cool. I'm curious. Do you have as a fan going to Molson Stadium? Is there one memory that kind of jumps out for you of you being in attendance? Something cool you saw?
Going to an Alouettes game?
Yeah, going to as a fan.
Yeah. I think, and it's probably in the memories of a lot of fans, but to me it was like when Ben Cahoon was playing, and then he would get a first down, and they were like, "Premier essai, first down, Ben Cahoon." Yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah, that was cool. You were a guy. I mean, you started at the University of Montreal, and then I'm curious what the draft process was like for you. I mean, what were your expectations going in? And then you went in the 8th round, and to have a career in this league, drafted in any round as long as you have is remarkable. But to do it being drafted in the 8th round, I'm curious, like, did you keep a chip on your shoulder? Are you like one of those NFL guys that can tell me every running back that was drafted ahead of you? And just how much did that fuel you? And do you think you would have had the same career had you not been picked in the 8th round?
No, I don't think so. I did not keep tabs on whoever was drafted before me. To me, all I wanted was a shot, you know. So I remember watching. We were with all the prospects in the room, and I think round 1 through 3 is televised, and then it's like you got to update your internet, your webpage. And to me, it's like once the televised portion was done, I was like, okay, let's just see how it goes. I really just wanted a shot. So as the rounds went by, round 6, round 7, then round 8 came around, I was like, okay. I never had my hopes down. All I was asking for is a chance. So I was like, even if I don't get drafted, to me it was like, I just want to have a shot. So I was like, okay, maybe tomorrow I'll get a call to go get invited to a camp, and then we'll just start from there. To me, it was just to put my foot in the door and have a shot at it.
Were you hurt though, Montreal? And Montreal had a pick, I think, right before Hamilton in the 8th round too. I mean, they passed, in every round that they had a pick. But were you hurt? Were you frustrated at all by that?
No, not really. I never had any expectations. Obviously, playing for Montreal was always like something I wanted to do, but I wasn't like, oh, they passed on me, like Montreal kid. Like, how could they, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if Danny was there at that time, I would have been like, come on, Danny, are you really passing on me?
You might have been a first-round pick if Danny was there.
But no, it was, like I said, to me, it was just like, let me show them. That was it. Let me show them. Let me just get an opportunity to do so, and that's how it started.
Favorite memory against the Alouettes? I'm sure you have a couple. You played pretty well at Percival Molson, I got to tell you.
Yeah, I tend to have good games. I think it's the family members in the stands, the friends watching.
Trying to upset your grandfather, trying to ruin his night.
Well, when I'm playing, it's never a bad night. So it's pretty good. No, a memory would be, it was cool. I think it was back in 2021. I wasn't the starter anymore, but ended up playing a bit in the game, and fourth quarter had that nice hurdle over a guy that led me to a touchdown, and it was also my girlfriend's birthday, so it was a pretty good game.
I'm just gonna say it because he was my boy. I think you jumped over Greg Reed. He is my boy. I think you jumped over Greg Reed. That hurdle thing, like, can you work on that? Like, because you've done it. That wasn't just against Montreal. Like, the Owls had a highlight tape come out last week where you hurdled 2 guys in a 30-second highlight tape. You work on that, and like, can you, like, how quickly do you have to tell in the moment where you're like, shoot, okay, I got a hurdle?
It's like, I think it's mostly instinct. You also have to have like a bit of fearlessness in the sense where like you might jump and the guy like will see it coming and he'll just chop you and you'll do flips in the air. But it's also, to me, it's like, I know I run hard and I know people don't necessarily like to tackle me. So I figured, like, if I have a good like head of steam and like I'm coming in full speed, there's a better chance of them going at my knees than trying to hit me in the head. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go. Let's just do it. Let's just try it. And it's funny because that exact hurdle against you said Reed, it was?
Yeah, it was Greg Reed, I think. Yeah.
It was like I didn't want to jump, and at some point I was like, okay, if I want to do this, like, it's now. And I remember like starting my motion to jump, and I was like, oh man, he's not ducking. And then last second he does it. I'm like, okay, cleared. And if you've ever seen the video of it, it's like we graze each other. Like, it was really like, it was a close win.
Yeah. Lastly, you spoke to, I'm assuming you spoke to Danny and Jason Moss about the role and the approach. Like, what was it that sold you on this, and what type of role can we expect from I'm going to have to get used to saying number 21 now.
Number 21, yeah. What kind of role? To me, it's like, we had a bit of this conversation walking here. To me, it's just, I want to be in a role where I could do something for the team. Just be involved as much as I can. If it's in the pass, the running game, or the blocking game, and even like blocking as a fullback. As long as I'm on the field and I can help other people around me make plays, or I can make plays myself, I'll be fulfilled as a football player.
Thanks again to number 21 of the Montreal Alouettes, Sean Thomas Erlington, who was nice enough to join us. That interview was recorded. I mentioned it earlier, but it was recorded late last week, but very generous with his time. And I think, if you're an Alouettes fan and you don't know who he is, come on. But I think you're going to really come to appreciate his style as a player, both on offense and on special teams. I think he's going to be a big factor in what the Alouettes want to do this season. All right. Winding down the PodcAls here, just want to remind you that the ticket packages are available. GoOwlsGo.com. You can get your 3-game pack, your 5-game pack, your Flex 10, and a full season long membership The 3 and 5 game packs, pretty self-explanatory. You can go to goalsgo.com right now and you can pick the games. But the Flex 10 is an interesting one. The Flex 10 is you basically just buy 10 tickets and you can use them whenever you want, subject to availability, of course. But if you want to use 8 tickets to one game and 2 to another, you can do that. If you want to do 7 and 3, you can basically do whatever you like. You can blow all 10 tickets in one game if you want, or you can go alone to 10 games. That's also possible. But make sure you check out the ticket packages right now available, goalsgo.com. The season membership is obviously you get tickets to every game. They include the playoff game as well that will be played at Percival Molson Stadium. I'm just going out on a limb right now and saying that that's going to be an East final. Yeah, that's the one that has the most advantages. There's a lot of fun stuff that you get. I'm going to say this. I'm just going to slide this in there. I can't say exactly what the gift for season seat members is going to be this year, but it is a pretty cool gift. I know last year it was a really nice toque, or it was a cap, and then the year before that was a really nice toque. This year is going to be different. It's going to be a little more special, and I think you're going to want to sign up for a season-long membership so that you make sure that you get your hands on the season membership gift. It's an exclusive gift that is kept for season members. So make sure that if you're thinking about it, there's plenty of advantages. You get discounts at concessions. You get your own entrance to the stadium. You get discounts at the team store, but there's also a special gift that each season member will get. And there is a members' day every year at some point in the season. I think it's going to be, I don't know if the date's been determined yet, but it's usually in the summer where you get to come in, meet the players, ask questions to the general manager and the president. And I know it was a lot of fun last year. I had to miss it because I had COVID and it broke my heart that I couldn't be there. So yeah, make sure that you're there. And to get that invite to this members day, you need to be a member. So goalsgo.com for all your ticket information. Find the package that works best for you. I'm just telling you, you're not going to regret it. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Hopefully there's some more news and notes coming out over the next couple of days. We'll keep you informed on everything that goes down with the Montreal Alouettes. We'll talk some CFL too. We don't just have to keep it Alouettes. If you have a question, you can write to me on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at Joey Alfieri. My DMs are open. Feel free to reach out, ask me a question. And hey, if it's a really, really good question, which I'm sure it'll be, we'll even tackle it on the PodcAls. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a rating. Make sure you leave a comment wherever you get your podcast. But thanks for joining us this week. Thank you again to Sean Thomas Erlington, who was nice enough to grant us an interview. I think people are going to like him. But have a great rest of your week, everybody, and we'll see you next Tuesday.